Thank you all for tuning in to this edition of our virtual town hall. I'm Clint Morris, chair of the Fayette County Democratic Party, and I'm here with Corey Nichols, who is running to be our party's nominee for the 45th House District here in Fayette County. Corey, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Hey, thank you very much for hosting, for having me on.
We realize that with this time of Healthy at Home, that it's difficult for our candidates to get out and sort of press the flesh with
Right.
vote. We were trying to figure out a way to get you in front of the voters. So we appreciate that. I know our voters appreciate that as well.
Right.
So people like to get to know the candidates about them personally. It's hard to do right now without events and things to go to. So we have two questions that we're going to start off with to give a little bit of a preview of who you are as a person. Then we will jump into the policy questions, and then we'll open it up at the end and talk about yourself while you're that good stuff. So,
sounds good.
I'm going to start with a question that candidates have found it interesting, and I've found it really interesting to hear all the answers.
Yeah.
Last couple months, as we've been staying healthy at home, is there anything you've been watching, any shows you've been binging, any books you've been reading that you think voters should know about?
Well, I have been staying at home with my family, which includes an 8-year-old and a 19-month-old.
Oh, wow.
Who are named Isabel and Emerson. So as far as binging any content, it's been every different iteration of Baby Shark you could imagine. And recently we found a show on Disney Plus called Bluey, which is great for everybody. Everybody kind of likes it. Once they go to bed, I might stay up and rewatch Frasier or The Office for, the 10th time or 11th time. Those are my go-tos. But right now it's mostly Paw Patrol, Baby Shark, Daniel Tiger is a big one.
Nice.
Lots of Daniel Tiger in my house.
So we've all had the opportunity to slow down a bit in the last month or so, and so it's provided opportunity for introspection. Is there anything you've learned about yourself during this time of Healthy at Home that you want to share with everybody?
With my hair growing out, I'm learning that I have a lot more gray than I thought I did. It's coming in pretty well right up there. Really, I'm still working more than most. I work as a criminal defense lawyer and family lawyer, and some of those dockets, particularly like the domestic violence one, unfortunately persist through this. So I've been staying pretty busy. I think more than anything else, maybe not introspection, but I've had a lot of time for retrospection, and it's given me time to appreciate how lucky I am and how fortunate I am, my wife and I, to be in the situation we are. We're not feeling the same crunch that a lot of others are. We're able to pay our bills. And I think looking back, I can see, hey, I'm really lucky to be in that spot. And there are a lot of people in Kentucky and a lot of people in District 45 that aren't that way. So it maybe galvanizes my desire to move forward with this campaign and say, hey, we need somebody who can look out for these citizens and make sure that in dire situations or even in the everyday, that all of our community is looked out for. So I think that's what I've had time to reflect on in the last month and a half or so, that everybody's been slowing down, even though I've kind of been going at about the same speed.
Great, thank you for sharing that. We're going to jump into the policy questions now. And so what we did is we asked Democrats over the last couple of weeks to submit questions to us, and we have looked over those questions and we've narrowed them down to 7 that we'll be asking those who are running for the State House. And the first one segues really well into what you were just talking about with sort of how lucky some of us are. And COVID-19 has changed and will continue to change several aspects of most people's everyday lives. But what we're hearing from Democrats is that they're concerned that this has exposed some of the greater income inequality here in Kentucky. There are those that are not as fortunate to have the opportunity that some of us have to continue to work or do those sorts of things. So moving forward, what should our leaders, particularly our leaders in Frankfort, be doing to address this issue of income inequality?
Yeah, well, it's more than just income inequality that this is exposing. I think if you look at the big picture of what our life has become now, what's really been revealed is this illusion that we are separate from one another. What impacts one impacts us all. Even though, like I said, I'm still working. my life has changed fundamentally. And I'm looking at problems and issues that I never thought I'd have to deal with before. And when we're looking at not just income inequality, but healthcare inequality, there are those who now more than ever need access to healthcare that can't get it. And I'm sorry, the virus doesn't discriminate based on how good your healthcare is. You might receive better treatment, but you're just as likely to get infected or be exposed to contagion as any of your neighbors, right? So not just income inequality, but healthcare inequality is one of the biggest things. And I think we have to start by looking at employment and how we deal with healthcare and how we compensate our employees. I think it's high time that we raise the minimum wage in Kentucky. The federal minimum wage, it has stayed stagnant for a while, and other states are shooting past us with how they compensate their workers. I talked with a client earlier this week who said she was on maternity leave from McDonald's. She's got a baby who's 2 months old. I said, well, what does your maternity leave consist of? She says, oh, it's just 6 weeks off. We don't get paid. We don't get health care benefits through that. That's ridiculous. To take maternity leave, not only are you vulnerable because you just, had a baby, you also are in the midst of this unprecedented economic circumstance where you need healthcare, you need a better, more reliable income. The incumbent in 45 has voted against raising the minimum wage every time it's come up. Every time he's voted against it. Wow. It's time that the people in 45 realize that what helps one of our neighbors helps us all. And paying more to those who are working those minimum wage jobs, even if it was a sacrifice for you, it's a good sacrifice, but I promise you, it's going to help us as a community more than it's going to hurt your tax return or your wallet.
Definitely. And so you hit on this already, but if you'll flesh out a little more, we're seeing a critical weakness in our system of employer-based healthcare.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think Kentucky can do to ensure? What are some of the things that specifically the legislature should be considering to ensure good and affordable access to healthcare for all Kentuckians?
That's a good question, and I think we've already answered it. Here's what I mean by that. Governor Steve Beshear, circa 2013-ish, authorized the expansion of Medicaid in Kentucky. Kentucky did better than any other state. You can't convince me otherwise. Kentucky did better than any other state with rolling out this Medicaid expansion, and we were doing very well. In comes 2015 and Governor Matt Bevin, who throws it all in the garbage, and now here we are. Thankfully, we have some reprieve from that, but all of the momentum that Governor Steve Beshear started with expanding our Medicaid, Andy Beshear is starting from scratch. And it's hard to get that momentum back, especially when we've got a situation like we're in now. If we had that Medicaid expansion through 2015 to 2019, I think Kentucky would be in much better shape right now with our healthcare system, because a lot of those really vulnerable people would have that access to healthcare that they're lacking right now. And again, when it comes to health, what affects one of us affects all of us. So it behooves everybody, and I shouldn't have to appeal to it this way, but it behooves everybody to make sure that each of our citizens has access to healthcare.
Definitely. And, part of the reason I think a lot of the discussion is cost. And we hear every session, particularly every budget session, that budgets need to be cut. What do you think we could do? What new sources of revenue could we explore to get out of this sort of path that we're on, that we should just always be slashing budgets?
Well, the budget is always a big concern, and Kentucky has a lot of options available to us. I think a couple were addressed this year. One of them was expanding or authorizing sports betting. I don't think there's any reason we shouldn't do that in Kentucky. I mean, today we're recording this on Saturday, May 2nd. This is supposed to be Derby Day. Right. You're telling me that I can go to Keeneland or I can go to Churchill Downs and bet on a horse race, but the other kinds of sports betting we're not going to allow? Come on, I'm not buying that. I really don't. I think the arguments against that are moralistic at best, and they're not really, looking at what we could do. And they say, oh, that's only $25 million. $25 million is a lot of money. Let's not act like that's not something that can make a difference in our budget. The other part of that, and this was also addressed in this legislative session a little bit, is medicinal and I think really recreational marijuana. And a little bit of background on me, Clint, you may know this about me, but I've been a Baptist for a long, long time. I was a youth pastor from when I was in law school up until a couple of years ago when I stopped going to my church in Shelbyville and started my family in Lexington, even though I've been living in Lexington for a long time, started going to church in Lexington. I don't plan on using marijuana, but it's time that we legalize it recreationally and get some money from it, right? Colorado authorized this in 2014. In the last 5 or 6 years, their state revenue has gotten over $1 billion from it. That's not gross money. They've grossed over about $6.5 billion. They put over $1 billion into their state budgets. That money goes toward the general fund. It goes toward education. It goes toward mental health and drug abuse recovery programs. And Colorado is not a state like New York or Texas or California where you're looking at a population of, tens of millions of people. Colorado has 5.5 million. Kentucky's got about 4.5 million. Kentucky can do that. And we can put $200 million a year into our budget by authorizing recreational marijuana. Why are we not doing this? Things like that where a lot of the majority in the state legislation says, oh, we can't afford this, and oh, we don't want to authorize money for this, or we don't want to authorize this to make money. And you can't have it both ways. And if you're going to hold this issue of recreational marijuana and sports betting hostage, then the budget shortfall's on you. And you make the cuts to the things that matter to you, not the things that matter to the everyday citizen.
Great. Thank you for that.
I'm getting a little worked up. I'm sorry, man.
No, it's fine.
I'll calm down.
It's good. So, the two parties in Frankfurt seem to have very different legislative priorities. Much of this, I think, stems from a philosophical difference about the role government should play in the lives of citizens. If you are elected, what will be your legislative priorities and why?
I think that saying a different priority system is a very diplomatic way to put it, Mr. Morris, and I credit your phrasing on that one. In my perspective, I don't think the majority has really been looking out for the everyday Kentuckian at all, right? My priority, first and foremost, is going to be education. I mentioned to you before, I was a youth pastor. Well, in a different life, I was also a teacher. That was where I got my bachelor's degree in, was English and special education. And I worked as a teacher for a few years before going to law school. I've seen firsthand the impact that education has on our day-to-day life. And it's not just something that affects us today, that's something that affects us forever, right? So when we're looking at, hey, what's going to help us in 2020? My answer is education. What's going to help us in 2050? My answer is all caps education with 3 exclamation points, right? Again, I mentioned the incumbent in 45, Stan Lee. He's not in this race, but his legacy is all over this race. And he is one of the state's biggest proponents of siphoning money away from public schools to fund private charter schools that aren't accountable to people, right? That are really just there for business and profit and not there for education. So priority number 1 is preserving our education, preserving our public teachers and their quality. My mom was a public school teacher for 15 plus years and was perennially underpaid. She worked harder than anybody I knew and was underpaid. We need to fix that, because if that continues to be the case, our good teachers are either going to go to a different field or a different state. So that's priority number 1. After that, just very briefly, I would say my priorities would be looking out for our middle class by raising the minimum wage, by making sure that everybody has a livable income. And then also my background right now as an attorney in the criminal justice world is making sure that our criminal justice system is fair and equitable and focused not on putting people in private prisons, but on rehabilitation and deterrence to make sure we have a happy, healthy community in Central Kentucky.
Thank you. So moving on, this next question is sort of where politics and policy collide in an interesting way every 10 years. For those who are watching, I hope you know the census is going on, and you should
take your census. Go online, take your census.
Take your census right after this video. But the General Assembly is going to be charged with drawing new legislative boundaries. Describe for us how you think the redrawing process should work, And what would you do to help ensure that the district lines are fair? And what should we be doing to make sure that we protect the voices of minority communities?
Right. Boundaries for these districts should be made in a common sense way geographically, and that's it, bottom line. Any other attempt to gerrymander the district to make sure you get your voters and to distribute voters against you, strategically, is ridiculous. You look at folks like Dan Crenshaw's district in Houston. You ever looked at Dan Crenshaw's district?
Haven't, no.
Look it up, Clint. It's ridiculous. It's absurd how these people draw these maps to make sure that they get elected, right? And when your first priority in office is staying in office, you're doing it wrong. Okay, let the will of the people be the will of the people. You look at states like North Carolina, who in 2018 voted just over 50% Republican, and yet Democrats only got 3 of the 13 House seats. That's wildly disproportionate. You look at a state like Pennsylvania, which had a similar outcome with 27% of the House seats going to Democrats. We can't let that happen in Kentucky. We have to be vigilant, and that starts with the legislative bodies, which is why election year 2020 is a crucial year. And of all the elections this year, I'm maybe a little bit biased, Clint, maybe weigh in. I think House seat 45 might be the most important.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's flippable.
It's flippable, and we can take that position. And you hate to say that, it's flippable from a red to a blue, and that's what's going to prevent us from gerrymandering. But I think that's where we are, right? And I think that our priority, if I'm in office, my priority is not to say, hey, let's make sure Democrats stay in office. No, my priority is to say, hey, let's make sure all of these elections are fair geographically, and let the chips fall where they may, because that's how democratic representation works.
Well, thank you for that, and it's something that we're concerned about as well when you think about what could happen to the representation that Lexington has in the legislature.
The minority is already stark enough.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that speaks to a history of these districts being drawn a certain way, because I think Kentucky's more purple than our elected officials make it look. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I think.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right there. We're talking a little bit about the future here, and this next question I think is a natural place to go. How will you work as both our nominee and as a member of the State House to engage young voters in conversations about policies and the issues that face Kentucky?
So, just real quick, how do you define younger voters? Like millennials and below, or?
Yeah, I would think so. We're looking at, the folks that are, they haven't bought their starter home yet. They're in their mid-20s and younger. Yeah.
Well, I am a millennial, and I think, Clint, you're about the same age as me, right? I don't want to throw you under the bus here.
Yeah, I'm 36.
37. I'm going to be 34 on Thursday. I had to think about how old I was. That's bad. I'm going to be 34 on Thursday. I am a millennial. I am in the midst of my second once-in-a-lifetime economic downturn. Right. I graduated from college in 2008 and then had to go look for a job in the midst of the biggest recession in decades. Now here I am. I just got a little bit of momentum under my feet with a professional career, and this is happening again. Right. I think people my age and younger are disillusioned in a lot of ways. And I think that disillusioned is fair. It's justified. And what they haven't seen, or what I haven't seen in large part, is the ability to level and be compassionate and to also maintain your integrity, right? People who are in their mid-30s and younger, we kind of have a sixth sense for when somebody's not being genuine with us. Right, we're jaded enough, we can tell. So the first way to engage younger voters is to restore that faith by maintaining a selfless integrity, and saying, hey, I'm wanting to be elected, not because I want a career in politics, but because I want to make sure that we're preserving the best Kentucky that we can for people like you, and for people all over the state, right? It starts with that sincerity, because if you don't have it, you're wasting everybody's time.
And connected with that, how would you, as a leader, as a community leader, an elected official, work to increase what we're calling civic competency in Kentucky? And that can range from anything from knowing the process, but also knowing how to consume information. What would you do? How would you see your role as a leader in making sure that is something that we're all thinking about?
Yeah, I think the first step as a leader is to shut up and listen. In my role as representative, I would be responsible for just that, for representing a portion of the population that lives in the area of Lexington, south of New Circle Road and north of Jessamine County, right? So civic competency starts with me being able to listen and synthesize solutions based on what people are telling me, not just saying, oh, you elected me, therefore I'm going to go in and do whatever I want. See you in a couple of years when I need you to vote for me again. That's not how it works. And I believe that if leaders are willing to listen, they'll find people who are willing to engage. 100%. People want to be heard. Nobody in Central Kentucky or in any part of Kentucky wants to stay disengaged from the civic process. They just feel like it hasn't been listening to them, right? So that's priority number one. Priority number two, and I know I'm going to sound like a broken record here, is education. Again, civic involvement starts with an investment. You're not going to be involved if you don't feel invested. And you can't be invested if you don't know what's going on. So that starts with our parents and our teachers, making sure that the young people, from as young as they're willing to listen to you. I've got, like I said, an 8-year-old stepdaughter, and I've walked her through this process. She's like, what are you doing again? I'm like, I'm running for the House of Representatives. She said, what's that? I was like, well, there's a lot going on, but here's what it is and what it does, right? She wants to listen. She's 8 years old. She wants to know what's going on. If we're able to teach from that age, hey, here's what's going on and here's how you can be involved, I think you'll have lifelong civic contributors to the process, as long as they don't get burned, right? At least not burned too many times, which has happened before.
Thank you for that. So that's all the questions we have for you.
Yeah.
So I'm going to open it up now for you to take, the next several minutes to talk about anything you want to talk about, yourself, your campaign, policies that you're passionate about, how people can engage. But I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, great. Appreciate that. How much time do I have? Like 30, 45 minutes, right?
Let's say about 3 minutes.
3 minutes? Okay. Well, let me cut it down some. My priorities is really, like I said, to listen and to hear from you all first. I have a few things in my mind that I think I've heard are important, specifically our public schools, specifically our healthcare systems, our economy, making sure that we have jobs available, not just any jobs, but good jobs. We can't let another Brady company come in and steal our taxpayer money and then leave us high and dry. We can't let that happen again. We've got to make sure that people are acting with integrity and actually looking out for our citizens and not their corporate bottom line. Okay. With our public schools, we need to make sure that we are paying our teachers, compensating our teachers, not taking their pension away. Okay. Again, because that's where all of these problems, I think, can be solved. And that's something that 45, unfortunately, much to my disappointment, has done poorly with in the last 20 years. Stan Lee, the incumbent's been in there for 20 years. That's a long time to have what I think is a regressive, backwards view on what education should look like. We've got a chance this year to turn it around, okay? And I'm worried that if we get a new Republican incumbent in there, that a lot of these issues that we've had for the last 20 years are going to stay the same issues for the next 20 years, right? 2020, they say hindsight is 2020. We've got an opportunity to look forward in this 2020. Right? And say, okay, what are the next 20 years going to be like? And 45, we've got a chance. And I don't want to just say flip it blue because, red or blue is not the important part. The important part is we've got a chance to put somebody in office that is actually concerned about the people living in 45, right? As far as how to engage, You can find me. I use primarily Twitter and Facebook. Again, I said before, I'm a millennial. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter. If you go on Facebook, it's Corey Nichols for House District 45. And if you go on Twitter, it's at CoreyForKY, Corey for Kentucky, right? Please feel free to send me a message or communicate with me in any way you want to. I'm as responsive as I can be, and I want to hear from people. I want to be able to pay attention and respond in a constructive way.
Well, Corey, we appreciate you being here and talking with us today. And for everyone watching, make sure you remember that the primary is June 23rd.
And you can mail in your ballots now.
Yes, and so we will be posting information on our website about how to access the absentee ballots. We hope that this encourages a lot more people to vote, and that participation will be higher, and that everyone can perform this civic duty in a safe way without fear of hurting themselves or their families. So
without doing what Wisconsin did.
That's exactly right. And so we're very, very grateful that Governor Beshear has worked on making sure that can happen.
And credit where it's due to Michael Adams too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So Corey, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Our voters appreciate it. And with that, I'll let you get back to the rest of your day.
Thank you, Clint. Always a pleasure.
Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye.